A friend and I had ducked out to go grab lunch, and we were waiting to cross the road. And I had a bi flag badge on, something that seems so simple. But someone who wasn't even at the conference, was just walking by, saw my badge, stopped me and was like, "Oh my gosh, I love your badge. I'm bi. I never see that anywhere. Like, where did you get it?" And it was this beautiful connection moment. So, not only is it a way to, get the word out and share, what it is that the podcast is all about, but you just never know who's going to see it and who's going to listen. It's really powerful.
This is Give It To Me Bi, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything from a bi plus perspective. I'm Chad Barnier.
And I'm Steve Spencer. Together, we're diving into the real stories, the challenges, and the celebrations of the bi plus community. We are here to learn together and, of course, to laugh together.
From personal journeys to cultural moments, we are here to amplify a bi plus point of view and spark conversations that matter.
So, whether you're bi, pan, queer, or just curious, join us as we explore the world of bi plus experiences.
Now, let us give it to you bi.
I taught myself how to crochet. Like over Christmas, I was like, I am going to crochet. And I was so frustrated at first because I was like, why am I not good at this immediately? But
oh my gosh, you sound like my partner.
I kept at it, and now I just have a basket of like 1,000,000 granny squares, which is amazing. But like, I was like, oh, I'm going to make them into a jumper. It'll be so great. Well, winter's nearly over and I still don't have a jumper. So here we are.
Well, you could just travel and just go, I'm going to follow the winter to make this worthwhile.
No, because I don't really like winter that much. If I was going to travel for the seasons, it would be perpetual summer.
Yeah, I have done that for several years and it's not my vibe. I somehow accidentally keep booking Japan in summer. I somehow I hate the heat. I'm a big boy and I do not cope well in the heat. And yeah, I just like last year we did Japan, and it was like 42 degrees while we're there and it was foul. And we're going to Japan on Tuesday and it's going to be a little bit less. It's not going to be that bad, but
42, that's pretty brutal.
Chad, I've realized I'm for sure the chaotic one. But I've been in a different room every episode we've filmed.
Yes, I love that.
Chad has got like the full setup. I just moved house, so I've had to like really adapt in the stress of life.
Everyone,
I feel like it's true to the brand though. Like you are chaotic.
Everyone needs a chaotic bisexual in their life, so you just fulfill that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I have something fun to share. So on our first ever episode, Steve shared that they got new bi merch, so like flags and towels and pins and stuff like that. Well, today I met up with a good friend of mine who is also queer, and they had made me a Taylor Swift Eras Tour style bracelet that says, let me show the camera. It says, what? Bicon in the bi colors.
Oh.
And I just wept. I just cried. I was getting my kid out of the car and I was just crying. I was like, it's so sweet. And they made one for Steve too.
Oh, yes.
Isn't that just so beautiful?
So sweet.
I'm a mess. I've cried like 3 times about it today. It's just so thoughtful. They're just like, I'm just so proud of you. Like, you guys are doing the thing, and like, really, really made my heart swell.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh.
So shout out. I'm not sure if I should name them on the podcast, but like, shout out to that friend. We love you. I love you.
Thank you. We love you.
But yeah, I was telling you just as Steve jumped on, is that we are so excited that this is our first ever guest show because you are the reason any of this exists. Like, we came together through SBN. SBN is only possible because of you, and just so eternally grateful for everything you are. Like, you make my heart soar every time I see your name online. Like, oh, that's my Amber.
Yeah.
Hi. Really beautiful.
Even today, so I had our NAPWA board meeting, so that's the peak national HIV body here in Australia. And 2 years ago, 0 bi plus representation on the national stage in the HIV sector. And today, every second minute, it was buy plus, buy plus, buy plus, buy plus across the country, programs being introduced, peer navigators being trained on buy plus issues. And it all started at Sydney Buy Plus Network. It literally all started there.
I have chills. That's incredible. Like just the way
Yeah.
that Buy Plus communities have grown, not just in Sydney, but across Australia over the last while is just phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, so we'll get into like the nitty gritty of it all, but we like to kind of start off with a little bit of light banter and then into what was your buy highlight of the week, your buy light of the week. So, Amber, do you want to be a part of our buy light section? What was your buy light of the week?
My buy light of the week was when a friend brought me this really, really cool sticker. So we met up at a cafe, and they brought me this sticker that says "Buy Furious," and it's this like giant, huge. It's huge. It's like buy flag, big print, and I just slapped it on top of my on my laptop. And they gave me a whole stack of extras that they had snagged from the Greens office, and I took them into work, and I just put them on the table in the kitchen, in the shared kitchen area. And by the end of the day, they were gone. I don't know, so my bylight of just people were snatching them up because we are everywhere and people want that. They want to see that representation. They want puns. They want to be part of it. So that was my bylight. It was very exciting.
That is so cool. I love that. And also Buy Furious, fantastic reclamation of Buy Curious. That's like not, and we love our Buy Curious peeps, but it's a great reclamation of that phrase. I love that. Steve, what was your bylight for the week?
I'm going to jump off Amber's bylight. So, I work in the HIV sector, of course, and we recently had the global AIDS conference, the International AIDS Conference over in Munich. And I sent over people to do my bisexual bidding. And at this conference, there's about 12,000 delegates. My friend printed off heaps of flyers for Bi Plus HIV positive people, threw them around the conference, and they were working at sort of the front desk as a volunteer, and they had a pile of them. And by the end of each day, they got rid of about 100 of them. And it was just people being like, and people were remarking like, we've never seen Bi Plus representation at these conferences. How do I connect? What can I do? Or even just like a thank you, just for our community to be seen in these spaces. And it truly is, the case of you put it out there and we snap it right up.
What awesome. I love about both of those stories is it really is just a one person doing a thing. You know what I mean? One person saying, you know what, I'm going to take a risk, take a chance, kind of jump off without kind of like being too cautious and going, I'm going to do this, and been received so well. And like one person printing off 100 things, or one person having 50 stickers or whatever. Like that's such a seemingly such a small thing to do, yet for somebody else to receive it, that's so cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
My bylight of the week, I shared just before, a friend of mine made us these beautiful Taylor Swift Eras Tour style Bicon bracelets. Made one for myself and for Steve. I also shared this podcast and shared some of our social graphics and assets and media publicly on social media. Steve loves when I say assets. I work in marketing, so assets, it's like the industry term, I guess. But I had colleagues sharing it who like may or may not be queer, and their friends in their social circles who may or may not be queer. I don't know. It's not my business. But sharing those to their audience because they support me, and that's really wonderful. But it's just so cool, like to be in a workplace where other people are willing to be publicly supportive of this work that we do, which was just super cool.
That's awesome, Chad.
I love that.
Yeah.
I have a second bylight.
Yo.
Chad snuck around in the middle of the night and left this T-shirt in my letterbox. So we have merch. I'm not sure if we'll have it on sale anytime soon, but I reckon we'll have some awesome merch out.
We will have merch, absolutely. This is more of like a networking tool. So okay, for people who are listening to the audio, not watching YouTube, it's our logo on a t-shirt, but it's also a QR code. And because I work in marketing, I want to know how people find us. And so that QR code has specific like URL parameters that would tell me that, oh, you saw Steve or Chad in person and took a photo of that QR code.
Yeah, that's one of my KPIs, is it now, Chad? This is
Yes.
how you monitor me. I know if you were wearing the shirt today, Steve, because you got very low engagement with the QR code.
Well, the cool thing is, like, we hang out in queer circles and we engage in queer circles that aren't necessarily bisexual specific, and being that kind of we say a bit, the bi lighthouse is so important, and being someone who is so out and proud and so active in the work that you do and that we do. I felt like, what an opportunity. If people want to support the community, support it, take a photo of the QR code and come subscribe to the podcast.
Yeah.
And you never know who sees that. Like, I remember this time where I was at a queer conference.
Yeah, absolutely. So our next kind of like part of the podcast is a little bit more of a topical, a timely segment. The idea is that Give It To Me Bi is to kind of provide a bi perspective on some things that are in the news or that are in media, or just to kind of just blankly call out, this is some bi representation that has occurred or isn't occurring well, etc. Steve, have you got anything that has come up in the last week, last 2 weeks or so, that you wanted to talk about? Or if you don't, I've got a couple in the bank.
Yeah, I've got one that came. Actually, no, I wrote 3 down.
Great, I love
what were
that.
they?
I did a panic list. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to find something ASAP.
I've got Julia Fox.
Mm.
Just because everyone's obsessed with Julia Fox at the moment, but I found it really interesting. Julia Fox was very proudly out as bisexual for many years, and then recently came out as lesbian. And I find it really exciting watching people go through their own personal journey, their own understanding, and watching her explore her sapphic attraction and really embody it. It's been a really joyful thing to watch.
Mm.
Next was Miley Cyrus.
Yes,
okay. I feel like I'm predictable. I feel like I'm getting really predictable. Miley. But Miley was just Miley. Wait, how does Miley identify?
I'm pretty sure pansexual,
I think.
Pan. So Miley was just inducted as a Disney legend. And again, just watching some bi plus excellent, and the way again that Miley gets to just be herself and show her incredible talent on such a huge platform and huge stage, and be so unashamedly herself. You know, I talk with Chad, you and I, we often talk about how, you know, we advocate and we talk really loudly about these things. And I know for myself, like personally, I do all of this so that people can just live their lives. And it's really nice. It was really cool watching Miley up on that stage.
I love that they've really carved out a path for themselves, and we always talk about, like, you don't need to go and bang a drum, you don't need to turn up as the typical blue hair bisexual or whatever it might be. You can turn up as your version of yourself and also be bisexual or pansexual or whatever, and that is the right way to turn up. And as someone who turns up as Miley does and has experiences through the Disney machine, those two things somehow still align. Even though you would think the Disney machine, which has previously spat out people like Miley and left them in the cold, it's pretty cool to see that honored. I don't know how Disney view it, but yeah, that's cool.
But by the way, my hair was pink. It was never blue.
I did have a blue hair phase, so I did feel
did?
that's okay. I forgive you.
Nice. I've had red and blonde and black, and now my natural brown.
Beautiful. Amber,
do you have any current events that have popped up in the last week or two that you might want to provide a bi perspective on?
Yeah, the big one on my mind in the news cycle is the New South Wales Equality Bill. It's a bill that independent Alex Greenwich has brought to New South Wales Parliament. It's an omnibus bill, which means that it includes a lot of different components to really try to address some of the disparities that exist for LGBTIQ plus communities in New South Wales. And in my opinion, one of the most important aspects of that legislation is getting bisexuality added into the New South Wales anti-discrimination legislation. That's something that bi plus advocates have been, really, really pushing for many years. And unfortunately, the debate on the bill has been delayed by Labor until September or October, which is pretty devastating because, these are, and that bill, the equality bill, is not just addressing discrimination against bisexuals. It's meant to, make processes better for trans folks, getting their gender markers changed for identification. It's intended to address, unnecessary surgeries against folks with innate variations of sex characteristics, like really, really important legislation. And New South Wales is so far behind. So
far behind.
So far behind. So it's really devastating that people think it's okay that these conversations don't have to happen and think that they can wait, because really they can't. Lives depend on legislation like this. So
absolutely. And a delay of months may seem trivial to some people, and I assume people outside of the community might see that as like, that's a couple months, like what are you worrying about? But it really can have such a massive impact. And also, what's to say that it doesn't come September, come October, come November, a couple more months. Let's just kick it down the road a little bit further, which it has been for how long now already? It's been
really long time.
Already too long.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Amber, I wanted to ask, so the current landscape of anti-discrimination law in New South Wales, you mentioned that bisexuals aren't protected by that. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what that means is that bisexual folks, and really anyone who is attracted to more than one gender, can't access the same processes underneath the anti-discrimination legislation. So, there's those processes are not easy for anyone. And when you can't access them because you're attracted to more than one gender, it really changes the length of processes that you can go through and cost. So they can be pretty lengthy and costly processes. By not having it covered by anti-discrimination legislation, it means you've got to go through different processes. And it also, I think there's a message there that tells us we aren't worthy of having our rights protected. And that is very significant.
Yeah, it's crazy because gay, lesbian, and I believe also trans people are protected under that law. And the only group missing are multigender attracted people. It's quite insane to think that it's 2024 and we are still seeing that sort of discrimination.
Yeah, I wonder if that is a hangover from a time where people thought that bisexuality fell under the banner of gay liberation and gay rights, where it is separate. And as you described, the processes would be markedly different and involve whole different processes. I wonder if that the hangover of you're just kind of gay or half gay or whatever, if that's been the delay and why it hasn't happened previously.
I think you're spot on. And I see and I hear from a lot of people that they just don't understand that bisexuality or pansexuality is distinct, and they are their own, and they are valid in their own right. And so I think that when I've had conversations with people about anti-discrimination legislation, they've said, oh, well, if you're being discriminated against, well, isn't that just because you're kind of gay? And it's like, no, that's actually not it at all. And so having to have what can sometimes feel like 101 conversations with people about bisexuality being its own sexuality. Yeah.
I love that you said 101. That's something that we've talked about previously. And actually, we've talked about outside of this podcast for years isn't it time to talk 102? Like, why aren't we there yet? And I feel like we almost concurrently have to do both, simultaneously have to do both, because there are people who are just not going to be at the same speed or at the same level of understanding as others. And if you're ready for 102, you're probably, I don't know, this sounds perhaps reductive. Most people talking 102 are probably in the community.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, which is, I mean, to our point before, we were talking about colleague support and talking about putting out flyers and stickers in break rooms and in workplaces. There are more bisexual people out there than folks realize. And because of many different reasons of bi invisibility, and we're about to get into Bi Visibility Month, we're getting very close.
Woo.
It could just take a bit of a, or let's all stand up together and let's just kind of be counted. We talk a lot about being counted and being visible and being obvious if it is safe to do so. And I think if people are out and are having those conversations in those spaces, it could be legislative. That's always the hardest word to say. Legislative circles or political circles or council circles. Oh, yeah, Susie down the hall's bisexual. Let's get her in here. Susie, what do you have to say? Oh, well, look at all these great community organizations that this is what they have to say. And it could just be a really great way to shortcut that conversation and advocate for us.
Really.
Amber, you really outdid Steve and I, because Steve had Miley Cyrus and
Julia Fox.
And I was about to talk about Emily in Paris. So you really
no, let's not. Let's we not. I'm putting my foot down at Emily in Paris. I'm so sorry.
Well, Amber, let's jump into maybe the topic proper for the episode. But welcome officially to the podcast. We are so excited to have you here. Could you please introduce yourself in all the ways that you identify that are appropriate for the conversation?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you both. My name is Amber. My pronouns are they, them. I'm currently joining you from Watamatagua land. And I've been based in so-called Sydney for nearly 10 years now. It must be getting close to 10 years. But I grew up in Colorado on Cheyenne, Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho lands. I sometimes don't feel that fussed about labels, but then other times feel really passionately attached to them. And I think that really depends on the context. That depends on who I'm talking to. And sometimes it depends on how I'm feeling that day. So generally, I use bi+ to describe myself, but I'm happy with bisexual, pansexual, queer. Right now, I'm really digging gender queer as a way to describe my gender. I think that is feeling right for me right now. But I think most important, I'm just so proud to be bi+ and trans.
Absolutely. Fucking snaps. We discussed before we kind of started recording proper. Steve and I are so excited to have you here. The reason this podcast exists at all is because of the work that you do. The Sydney Bi+ Network is where Steve and I found each other, working on projects there and engaging with the community there, finding ourselves there. We've talked previously about it was the first time we've been in a room where you just had this bizarre sense of ease that you never felt you knew you wanted or needed, but it just enveloped you as you walked into a space going, wow, everyone here gets it. And props to you. You created that space. I wonder, for the people listening at home, can you tell us your journey to SBN? How did that begin? How did you end up at Sydney BiPlus Network?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think firstly, I want to say that Sydney BiPlus Network is one of the greatest loves of my life. I have met just some of the best people through being involved, met both of you through being involved. And it's just such a stunning place for people to be themselves and for us to come together and do really cool shit for the community. So to answer your question, I think we've got to take us back in time to about 2017. So folks in so-called Australia will probably remember that 2017 was a really, really, really difficult year for queer folks because that was the year of the Marriage Postal Survey. And I was involved in a number of community groups at the time. But I remember.
And for context, the Marriage Postal Survey is Australia was fighting for marriage equality. There was a big plebiscite, and they went out to the public to vote on whether or not we should have marriage equality. It was extremely divisive, extremely triggering for wide swathes of the community across the entire country.
Yeah, it was a really, really tough time for folks. So yeah, I was involved in a number of community groups at the time and just really consistently felt like a fraud as a bisexual in those spaces. Like I remember thinking, I hope no one finds out that I'm in a relationship that looks straight because they're going to think I don't belong and that I'm not part of this. So I obviously had some really internalized bullshit messaging around bisexual people impacting me. And so that was maybe one of the most formative times of my life that got me consistently thinking about why BiPlus spaces and BiPlus specific communities were so important. So then fast forward into 2018, I was finishing my master's degree and had like a million things on. And I thought, you know what, now's a really good time to organize an event because I don't know what I'm doing. So I thought,
it's just a master's degree. I mean, like, just plenty of spare time.
It's totally fine. And thought, I really want to organize an event for BiPlus Visibility Day. And then I really got thinking about it and sitting with it more. And I felt really, really worried about hosting or organizing an event without having some of the community infrastructure to go around it. So I thought, oh, fuck, if we do this whole event, like it might be beautiful. I want it to be beautiful. I want people to feel seen and heard and to be able to connect. But if people just go home afterwards and don't have a place to connect, that's, maybe not particularly safe. And kind of parallel to that, I was really, really looking for BiPlus spaces myself. Coming off of what I had experienced in 2017, I was so desperate for BiPlus specific anything really. And I had attended, I went to a few BiPlus meetups. They were specifically for women, and I was going through a whole gender crisis at the time. So as lovely as those spaces were, they weren't for me. They were also mostly in alcohol-fueled spaces. And again, even though it was really nice to go out and dance and just have a really good time, it wasn't really what I was looking for. So honestly, I just put a call out to the internet and I was like, are there any other bisexuals out there? I posted it into all of these queer and feminist groups I was part of. And I could not believe the amount of people that got back to me. They were like, holy shit, I've been wanting this. Where has this been? We know they've got really cool stuff in Melbourne, but we haven't seen anything in Sydney for a really long time. So this is so needed. So yeah, I guess that's really how it all started. And none of it would have even gotten off of the ground if it weren't for the people that got back to me and got to organizing with me alongside me right from the very beginning. So yeah, that's how it all started. We launched in September 2018 and have been going strong ever since.
No way. So almost 6 years.
Yeah. Yep. Almost 6 years.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Insane.
Amber, I just love And I hear this a lot from advocates, and especially also from BIPOC people. Just like, I want this thing. Where is it? All right, I'm gonna make it. And you made it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Hell yeah.
like reflecting on all of it, I think at that time I was so angry. I was so angry that those spaces for us didn't exist. I was so angry that I didn't see programs for us from queer organizations. I was angry at everything. And don't get me wrong, there's still a lot that I feel really angry about. But
By
Furious, hence the sticker.
Oh my gosh, yes. Nice.
But I think what really actually keeps me going is the love that I have for community and the love in the relationships that I've developed for community. And that's actually what sustains me in the work. It's not really the anger anymore. It's the love.
I am so intrigued by that. I had a whole other tangent I wanted to go down about how to begin and kind of take that seed of an idea. However, let's focus on that because there's often a fury. There's often a frustration and anger. Are you fucking kidding me about being in this community and having certain challenges or a reality of your life? How do you focus that? How do you not burst out and go, I'm so fucking pissed off all the time? How do you harness that energy and turn it into something for good? And does it always have to be for good? Can you just rage?
Yeah, I think you absolutely can just rage. And I think that anger is absolutely justified in so many cases. And I do think that a lot of marginalized people get demonized for having anger, which, that's not at all what I'm about. And so I am very careful when I talk about that line between love and anger. But I think for me, that love has really grown from the relationships that I've built in community, the people that I organize with, and getting to know folks, and having, really, really meaningful conversations about our values and what's the future we want for community. And from that, I think that's where the love comes from. It's grounded in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you say values because that is something that I know to be true of you and something that really took me, kind of a moment to catch up to when I started to connect with Sydney Bi Plus Network. I have always considered myself a values-based person, but I guess almost on an idealistic plane, right? When I discovered Sydney Bi Plus Network and I would turn up to community meetups or planning days, and then after joining the leadership events and planning committees, one thing I noticed from day one was that you were always values first. It didn't matter if it meant that you were financially unable to recoup. It didn't matter if it meant that certain stories didn't get told. It meant that the most equitable version of an event or a space or an experience was had. And it has been one of the most inspiring things to witness and something that I don't think I'll ever be able to match in my lifetime. It's something that I try to live by, but I fall short of all the time. But you are my kind of aspirational benchmark of that is how you be values led in a space. How do you, as someone creating a space for the first time, and forgive me if it's not the first thing that you've done in organizing, how do you hold true to that despite all the extra challenges that come with doing that?
I think for me, the first thing is always acknowledging and knowing, and I guess sitting with the discomfort that I'm going to fuck up and we're all going to fuck up. And that, like, even when we are values driven, we fuck up, and just sitting with that and like feeling okay to explore what that means and feeling okay to take accountability for that. And, acknowledging the impacts that has. I think that sits at the core of it. because it's not about being, it's not about being better than anyone, or it's not about organizing in a better way than anyone. It's about having conversations with people about what we really care about, and also really learning from other movements. So like we sit in a context of like really rich social, cultural, political histories, and being, I don't know, I was going to use the word humble, but humble doesn't even seem like it's the right word. But I'm going to use it anyways. Being humble enough that, you're probably not the first one to think about all of these things. You're not the first one to experience these things. What can we actually learn from other people who have been here? And, part of that is exploring the truth of where we are. So knowing, the colonial history of so-called Australia, but also so many countries all over the world. Like, what does that actually mean for our organizing? And, acknowledging that we all have collective healing we need to do. So when we come together to talk about our values and talk about the future we want to have, how can we bring in learnings around, there's like really great healing justice framework. So like, how do we bring those things into what we do? How do we have conversations about liberation in our future? So I think those are the things that ground the values, but it comes back to, knowing that we're probably going to mess it up. And how do you navigate that? Knowing and learning from others. And what was the third one I was going to say? Oh, that's gone. It's gone.
I was going to bounce off what you were saying there, Amber. Just, we all fuck up. And it's about taking that accountability when that happens. And also, of course, doing the work before, during, and after. And so I wanted to touch on like what have been some of the biggest challenges you've faced in organizing and also in sustaining a community like the Sydney Bi Plus Network.
I think something that I find particularly challenging is that sometimes within Bi Plus communities specifically, there is not the acknowledgement that Bi Plus communities are racist spaces. They're spaces that can be really transphobic. And, there are spaces that are not, well, I guess to say the spaces that we create as Bi Plus people are not immune from, all of these other social harms. And so I think sometimes Bi Plus people can put Bi Plus communities on a pedestal when we've more privileged Bi Plus people can put Bi Plus spaces on a pedestal. And I've been in situations in community where we've had TERFs attacking us, where we have, people saying to us, well, why? I don't understand. You only platform trans people because you have trans people in your leadership team. Like, what's up with that? So like having to navigate those kinds of conversations, I find that really challenging and really confronting. And I think you sustain it and you get through it by understanding how you want to show up to conflict. And that's the third thing I was going to talk about was how do you want to be? Who do you want to be seen as when conflict arises? And really reflecting on that because Bi Plus spaces aren't immune to conflict.
And it sounds like in so much of the work that you do, either through community or through, again, how you might turn up to conflict, that it is so intentionally gauged by how do I want the future to be, because the past is not necessarily the thing that I would like it to reflect. That is quite profound that you are so actively thinking about the future. I would probably understand most people to be pretty reactive, pretty in the moment, but you seem to be very considerate about the future. Is that something you find innate to yourself? Have you always been future driven, or has it taken working in these spaces as you do to develop a sense of, no, well, that's important, so I'm going to prioritize that?
I have always been a dreamer. I remember being a kid and just like having writing all of these grand plans, or like, oh, this is what the kind of life I want. Like, I've always been a dreamer. But I also think it's been really informed by a lot of the people that I read. So like Octavia Butler
Good.
is one of my
Please tell us
Yeah.
all of the reading recommendations.
Octavia
I love this.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Her writing is just so stunning. It like you have to read with care because there's some really triggering bits to her writing, but she was really influential in maybe one of my all-time favorite books called Emergent Strategy, which is by Adrienne Marie Brown. And it's just like the guiding, like when I read Emergent Strategy, I was like, holy shit, this is like the language that I've been looking for. And Emergent Strategy is really based in how we show up in relationship to each other and how we show up in relation to the world. And the principles that underpin Emergent Strategy, I think really are thinking about, well, change is always happening. So how do we interact with that? And what does that mean for our future? So yeah, I guess, to answer your question, I think I have always been pretty future oriented. In fact, the last time I was visiting my parents, I found this like old box of my stuff and we were going through it. And there was like a book where I was drawing like, when I'm a grown up, I want to be. And I was like, I want to be the president and I want to be a teacher and I want to be a vet and I want to be a librarian. So it was like all of the different multitudes of like what the future could hold.
That's great.
Was Bicon on the list? Because you definitely got that.
It wasn't. I have that language though.
Not good enough.
I'll just hop in my time machine and go back to 5-year-old Amber.
Yeah.
Definitely type Bicon.
I reckon there are 5-year-olds today who might know that word, and I hope that we've got kids right now writing in their diary, I want to be a Bicon when I grow up.
Same.
Adorable. That's fantastic. So Steve and I have spent some time around the Sydney BiPlus network. We've engaged in some of these spaces and some of the organizing committees, and there is some fantastic work going on, but it's not without its challenges. You're working with volunteers. You're working with people who are, it's quite emotionally and intelligently draining. There is a huge lack of funding and resources. How do you navigate all of those things? How do you turn up as, and I say leader very loosely because I know that it's not necessarily a term that you as someone who's so community focused might hold close. But as someone who is organizing these people, how do you navigate some of these challenges? Because I mean, I have a team at my work that they get paid a full-time wage, and we have systems and we have processes and expectations, and that can be challenging. You know, you're working with volunteers and so many resource limitations. How do you do it?
It's really fucking hard, and something that I've had to really learn, and I'm still learning this because I still don't get it right, is how to say no to things and knowing, being able to, I don't want to burn people out. Like I've had conversations with people who were organizing in BiPlus spaces years ago. And, I remember asking them like, well, what happened? Like there was this really beautiful, vibrant community. Where did it go? And one of the answers to that was people got burnt out. And again, we see that in lots of other movements. So, the fact that we are volunteers, it does make it incredibly, incredibly hard. The fact that we get no ongoing funding makes it damn near impossible to do the kind of stuff that we want to do. So I think it comes back to having conversations with each other about where do we want to put our energies. And if we say yes to something, what are we going to say no to so we can direct our energy into that? And that's something that I mess up a lot. Like I am a chronic overcommitter. So, oh my God, I was listening.
Yeah.
I was listening
Hey.
to my astrology.
We should start a support group.
My astrology podcast the other day was like, stop saying no to things. And I was like, stop calling me out like that. That's a bit rude.
Yeah, whoa, you're staring straight into my soul. That's a bit rude.
Saying all of that. Like we are a collective. So when someone has whatever going on in their life that they need to, step out of organizing for a little while. Like we celebrate that. And we say, look, like, I'm really proud of you. It's hard to, in a world that is about constant grind, what can we do to resist that? And sometimes that's not just saying no to projects here or there. Sometimes that means stepping away. And so when we do have people in the group that need space, we celebrate that. And I think it's also that I really value and bring into SBN people leaning into their strengths. And like, every time we have people together, it's like, what do you love to do? Or what do you want to learn to do? And like, let's grow that. So we're not doing projects that nobody gives a shit about, or that, nobody has the capability to do. And that in the sense of a true collective, like when everyone chips in, we can get it done.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I can attest to those values. There have been times where with SBN, I overcommitted myself in a season where I did not have the capacity. And I was met with so much grace and so much thoughtful consideration that I never received that anywhere. I was working a job that was very intense, working with vulnerable communities through COVID. And I was like, whoa, I got to turn up for SBN. And I overcommitted. And and I was just given so much space to just turn up the way that I could turn up. And it was super cool. So I guess my follow-up question to that is, as someone who is organizing, how do you avoid burnout? Or do you not get that same grace given to yourself by yourself?
I need to give myself more grace, more compassion. I feel really lucky because I'm in a workplace right now that really values not just self-care, but community care. And so we talk a lot about what that means. And so I'm in an environment where being compassionate and not holding myself to impossible perfectionist standards is really permeating all the time. And I think that's been beneficial. I also go to a lot of therapy.
Yes, like
so that
we love.
Yeah, love that. So I think that can be really helpful, but fuck, I'm bad at it. I say, although actually I have an example of something that we said no to very recently that I feel quite proud about. We got approached by a government body that's doing a whole of government statewide LGBTIQ plus strategy. And they wanted to include us in the stakeholder group. And at first we're like, oh yeah, really excited, rah, rah, rah. And then when we asked, okay, well, how are you going to compensate us for that? They were like, oh no, we can't do that. And, having to explain to them, we are all volunteers. If you want us to be at these meetings, we actually have to take work off because this is not our day job. And, there was quite a bit of back and forth. And ultimately they just said, no, we're not going to pay you. So we had to say no to that. And
like name and shame, Amber, name and shame.
The South Wales LGBTIQ plus strategy.
Wow.
No, so, that was really, really hard, but having to be honest and like for myself that like, I love that shit. Like that advocacy work is something that I'm so passionate about. And so for me to say, actually, no, I'm not going to spend my time doing this because you're like, as a project, as a team that's organizing it, putting it together, their values, they can't put their money where their mouth is. Like they say they care about these things. They say they care about equity, but aren't actually showing it. So, had we said yes to that, we would have had to say no to something else that maybe would have had more impact for our community. So, I'm still not perfect at it, but every time I have one of those wins, I do write it down. Like I'm a very big, I journal, nice. I write a lot. So like I keep track of those things to remind myself what it feels like to say no and like actually interrogate that for myself.
I don't know about you two, but I get volunteer guilt sometimes because like you said, Amber, it's like, oh my God, this is my jam. Like this is the shit that I really want to be doing and it's not paid. You might mention like, oh, is there compensation? They'll say no. And you're like, oh, but I just really, okay, I'll just do it. And I always keep on finding myself saying yes to things where I'm not getting compensation for my time. I'm a volunteer in all of these things. And I always wonder, like, am I devaluing the work of our entire community by giving this for free? And what does that say about them as well? As you mentioned, their values as well, the fact that they don't put the same value on our time as they would. I mean, we're talking a lot here about volunteer circles within the Bi Plus community, and that's just reflective and how volunteer heavy it is. And that's just reflective, and Chad and I have talked about this, of how underfunded, severely underfunded this community, which is the largest portion of the LGBTIQ plus community, how minimal our funding is compared to other communities, in that group. And if we did have day jobs in that sector, if we did have all of this, we would have that ability. And it's upsetting to think that they can actually jump over to another organization that might not be focused on Bi Plus issues, that might not even have Bi Plus people at the helm, and getting them to speak on our behalf. It's always really upsetting to think about there.
Yeah, I'm
absolutely.
I'm so with you. And I often get into this spiral of like, if Steve's not there, if someone from SBN isn't there, or, like if this handful of people aren't there, those people aren't going to be represented. And then I have to remind myself that that's actually not our fault.
It's not.
Like, this entire system is designed to exclude us. It's the systems that we're working within are not actually there for our liberation. And so, like, playing into that and just being like, oh, well, I'll just do it so there is some Bi Plus representation. I don't know how good that is for us. I'm with you, Steve. It's really tough.
I use the analogy of having a seat at the table, and I've got so many unpaid seats at so many tables, my ass is sore. And
you
it's
have to
like,
fucking bring your own seat.
You have to bring your own seat, and it's not cushioned. And I pray for the day that we have funding for some cushions at the table, because we often are invited to those tables, but at such a severe disadvantage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's not enough. It's not enough.
It makes me think about how and where and when that can be solved, and well, maybe not solved. Maybe solved is too hopeful. But if we're going to be going into spaces that need representation, need correction, need visibility, my assumption is they're not doing the work to be equitable, pay, fund, etc. So my mind then goes to, cool, let's fund the heck out of community organizations. Fucking everyone call up Sydney Bisexual Network, like fucking email and say, hey, let's like create a bit of a rainy day fund. So when someone like the New South Wales government or someone else comes along and has their shitty policies that they won't pay, but we should have a seat at the table, then we as a community can say, you know what, that's important enough to fund. Let's take it out of the kitty, instead of, oh wow, well SBN had $300 all year instead of the 30,000, 300,000 that we should have to do all this great community work, because it's just inevitable that the people who need the work from us aren't going to pay us. That's just how it's going to be.
Absolutely. And in those cases, it's, for me, two things. One, tokenistic. Like they want us there because they know they'll get their asses handed to them if they don't have some Bi Plus representation.
The B.
Yeah.
We're there.
And which is like the lowest fucking bar. Like the bar is on the floor for that.
Yeah, that someone was there.
Yeah, exactly. And
on their rickety chair.
Their shoddily built IKEA chair. And two, it's just exploitative. Just exploitative. And for me, it doesn't always have to be financial compensation. Like I think about Well, when it's like major power holders, yeah, it tends to be financial compensation that I want for our time. But when we're working with other community groups, I think like I care about working in partnerships that are reciprocal. And so, when it's working with other community groups or other, community-based projects, it's how can we work together? What can we learn from you? What can you learn from us? And like that could be the compensation. It doesn't always have to be monetary, but when there's that really massive power dynamic, power differential, yeah, fucking pay us for our time.
Hey, Amber,
Yeah.
I'm going to be cheeky here because I heard that Sydney Bi Plus Network can receive donations for some of the upcoming Bi Plus visibility events. So we can actually support our community groups. Could you tell us a little bit about that, Amber?
Yeah, I sure can. So at the moment, we're raising some money for our Bi Plus Visibility Day event, which is called Bylines. This will be our 6th year running Bylines, which is my wildest dreams.
It's the best.
Such a good.
For those listening, it's the best. Steve and I have been involved in different capacities at different times. It is a blast.
Yeah, it's the bylight of my year, truly. But what it is, it's a story sharing event. So we invite Bicons to share a story about a particular theme. This year, it's all about how we define norms, saying no to the status quo, and what that means for our communities. So we do some story sharing. We do a community connector event, or activity for people to get to know each other, and then a panel discussion. And we pay all of our story sharers. Running a good event costs money. So we're raising money to pay our speakers for the venue, and to, make it happen, to bring it to life.
Awesome. Where can people go to donate some money?
People can go to our Instagram, which has got the link to the campaign.
Awesome. We'll link to that.
Sweet. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I'm so excited for this event.
It's going to be great. So excited.
Yeah. I've had people.
Sorry, Steve?
I've had people be like, and to the listeners, like, if the question in your mind is, is this event for me? You're asking the correct question. Yes, the event is for you. I've had people say like, I'm only just like discovering myself. I'm only just coming out, or, I don't want to take up someone else's space at that event. No. This is for you. This is for you, baby. Like the Byline, the City Bi Plus Network is made for people just like you, no matter where you are, no matter who you are. It's so brilliant.
Also,
They're talking before about the chairs at the table. Sydney Bi Plus Network brings all the chairs, and your name is on one of them. And just to kind of decentralize for a moment, these events are often quite global, and so like the Sydney Bi Plus Network obviously services the so-called Sydney and surrounding areas. If you're in the area, we've done online events previously, but we've collaborated with people across Australia, in Melbourne, in Queensland, Perth, and different places. But also to people listening abroad, there are spaces, and what we kind of mentioned before about you almost have to be a bit of a leap taker to kind of say, here I am, where are you? And there's a bit of a magnetization that happens when you start to kind of put up your hand. You'll see other people's hands lifting at the same time, and you go, "Oh, cool! Okay, I found you. Cool. Let's go to the thing. Let's turn up." And the first time you might go to some of these events, it could be a bit awkward. Absolutely, we've all been to awkward events, but that's not specific to queer spaces. I mean, I go to my favorite theater sometimes by myself, and like, oh, okay, I'm having a really bad house wine by myself. But but going to these spaces, it just takes 1, 2, 3 times turning up. Someone goes, "Hey, I recognize you. Come talk to me. I like you. We've got something in common, obviously." And so get along. Go to. We've got obviously Sydney Bi Plus Network, but it's Bi Visibility Month, Bi Visibility Week, Bi Visibility Day. Be visible.
Yeah, soon to be a quarter. We're going to take up the whole quarter, and then maybe a whole year.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure if Bi
financial
Visibility
year.
Month
a month's not enough. A month's not enough.
Yeah, bisexual financial year.
Count me in.
I feel like Bi-Vis Day, Bi-Vis Week is a thing. I always say month,
I
but
always
I
say
feel like
month.
I'm maybe
Yeah.
month now.
It's month.
It's month
great.
now.
Slay.
It's month.
Very demure. Very much.
Demure. Okay, what is this demure? We're recording, right? Yeah. Okay, what's this demure trend? Am I?
Girl, you just need to get on TikTok.
on TikTok.
Stop hanging on Reels. Get on TikTok.
I'm probably on TikTok without knowing I'm on TikTok.
Well, technically, we have a Give It To Me by TikTok, a little plug.
do.
And so technically you're on TikTok. So you just need to tock that tick and tick that tock, babe. No
The
one
Tiki Toki. The Tiki Toki is how I call it. I'm like, are you kids on the Tiki Toki?
The Clip Clop app. That's what I heard.
The clip-
I heard someone call it that.
Wow.
I was like, oh.
So, welcome back, listeners, to the Elder Millennial Show.
Nice. We are judging and ranking people based on, are they brat or are they chapel? Like, what's the feminine phenomenon? No, well, I would love to have a little bit of a change of pace. Talked about all of the challenges, some of the frustrations and barriers to potentially running a community organization. What are some of the successes? What are some of the things that have been really like fills your heart? Some of the impact that you feel you've made, and perhaps that you might have a particular view versus other people have a particular view. We spoke earlier. Steve and I have obviously been impacted by the work that you do. But what are some of the success stories or the impactful work that have come through leading SBN?
I think it's really about the connections that people are able to make. Like, there is nothing like being in a room of other bi+ people where you don't have to explain yourself, where you can just be. It's like, I've described it before as that exhale after you've been holding your breath for a really long time. Like, that's what it is. Just like,
yeah, that's very accurate.
And so I think that's the biggest impact that SBN has, is just being able to bring people together in an advocacy space. I am really, really proud of two things. Last year we worked with Alex Greenwich's office for him to write a speech for Bi+ Visibility Day. And as far as I know, it's the first time Bi+ people specifically and Bi-Vis Day has been recognized in New South Wales Parliament, which is extraordinary. Yeah. No. And then
That's fantastic.
Yeah, what a moment. And then that same week, actually, myself and someone else from community were on a panel for mental health services inquiry. And so just being able to speak about the truth of mental health services for Bi+ folks, and having that recognized. And then to like be able to go back and see it in the Hansard, I was like, oh, this is like wild.
Wow. Because that was at Parliament, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that. That's exceptional.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Fantastic work.
It was so amazing. I damn near cried. Like, we had to introduce ourselves at the beginning, and I was like, I am proud, and I like pull myself together because it was just so powerful. It was really a moving moment.
Wow. That's exceptional.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I love that you said it's like an exhale. I've kind of described it. It's almost like letting your shoulders down. It's almost like that, like, oh gosh. Oh, I didn't realize my shoulders were up to my ears unnaturally.
Mm-hmm.
It's this like release of a muscle of like, oh, people get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like we all like Green Day. There's this kind of understanding
Totally.
of like, I don't have to fight for you to figure it out. I don't have to like, there's no political dance that we have to do together to like, just to recognize each other's reality. It's really quite beautiful. And obviously we've come together through a Sydney Bi+ Network. I would say that's one of your major achievements. But like the work that we worked on a bisexual health week, bisexual health awareness week. I think that's it, in February, March. I'm probably going to get that wrong. We did that.
March is Bi+ Health Month.
Thank you very much, Steve. So we had planned to do like a week kind of worth of work, and going back to what you were talking about before about values and kind of being led by values, we quickly realized that to do this kind of week campaign about bi-visibility and HIV health awareness in a bi-specific lens meant that it's not going to be a week. It's going to be a month worth of content. And the campaign that we ran after that was really quite wonderful. And that's how Steve and I got to really know each other, and the work that we wanted to do together was through a values-led bi-specific lens. And so here we are. We're hoping to do something similar in a different capacity, in a different medium. But I have witnessed the community focus and that, like, to be able to speak to politicians, policymakers who don't identify with our community, that's really profound, Amber.
Yeah, it is. And I think about all of these things, all of the examples that we've just given as like ripples. Like it might, bringing people together and then like having conversations, making connections, doing a campaign. Like they're all parts of ripples that make waves. Like we need all of it to make change, and we need all of it for our communities to be seen and safe and valued. So it really blows me away when I think about not just the amount of stuff that we've done, but the quality of the stuff we've done. It's like high caliber. Like it's really incredible.
Absolutely. And there's a lot to be said about that as well. Maybe, unfortunately, that things are taken seriously when they're done at such high quality, when they're done at a high quality. But something that Sydney Bi+ Network has always excelled at is, no, we're going to do this really right. We're going to make it extremely attractive. We're going to make it really extremely accessible as well. And you're going to walk the hardest mile, because actually, like, when you do something so well the first time, it can just be used and used and used and used as well. And those ripples will go out like the Bi+ Health Month that we did years ago. The presentations that we did are still being used today. Yeah,
Steve, can you tell me about you and I were talking previously or recently about the work that you're doing in this HIV space and at NAPWA is almost a direct tie to the campaign that we ran all those years ago through Sydney Bi+ Network.
100% a direct tie. We came together at Sydney Bi+ Network and said we need to increase the literacy around HIV within the Bi+ community. But not just that, we also need to give the health sector, the health space, our perspectives. So it was sort of like a two-way conversation and like multiple ripples going out at the same time. And it really kicked off a huge awareness within Australia's HIV sector around the really unique needs for Bi+ people when it comes to HIV healthcare. And so like the ripples that you're talking about, I get absolute kicks when I hear about an event on a topic, so HIV and being multi-gender attracted, when I hear about an event that I have no idea who's running it or what it's about, and I hear about it happening and I'm like, okay, people are picking it up and running with it. And for you to actually lose the degree of separation for something to get its own legs is like the ultimate, like the best feeling. It also means that we're one step closer to retirement when something like that happens, and I'm looking forward to that day.
Yeah, slow.
I don't know about you.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point, Amber. Is that something that, like, as someone who has kind of held the reins for a while, is that something that you are looking to do to make yourself irrelevant or build up? I know that like upskilling was a big priority when I was involved in SBN. Is that something that you're hoping to do? Is to go, hey, okay, 17 different people. Go, lead, have fun, like organize.
Absolutely. Yes, is the answer. I felt like a bobblehead as you were saying that because um,
Same.
absolutely. And it's actually one of the things I mentioned emergent strategy earlier and some of the principles that make up emergent strategy. And decentralization is one of the core elements of that. And like I've learned and I truly believe that it is not a movement if it's just one person. And everyone is going to bring their own strengths and their own connections and their own passions and ideas and lived experiences into the work. And so it is so important to me that it's not, the same 5-10 people running things all the time. Because we need those different intersections being represented. We need different ideas into it. And I mean, my ultimate dream is for SBN to not have to do the work that we do because the world is just okay for bi+ people. But until we get there, like I want people to bring themselves and, whatever comes with that into being part of SBN.
It sounds like it's almost one of the, you're talking about before, you being so future focused, is that one day you know that you won't be at the helm or being directly involved in the organizing of it. That a part of that is probably why the values are so important, that like one day I won't be here. And so the values that I hold, I want them to stay without me having to enforce them. And so if Steve or Chad or Susie, Ryan and whoever down the road want to be a part of the organizing committee at SBN, they have a framework, a baseline of what values our community want to uphold.
Yeah, because people leave, but values live.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that sometimes when people hear about Sydney Bi+ Network or even Bi+ groups all around the world, they sometimes think, oh, well, if it's just identity focused, like how do you actually get things done? And I think that's something that like can differentiate SBN from other identity driven community groups because we're so values based. And I know this is something that actually it took me a little while to come to terms with. Because for a while I was like, oh, Sydney Bi+ Network is for any bi+ person who wants to come and find community. And then I realized maybe that's actually not true. Like maybe we don't want the bi+ people who are creating harm. Like maybe we don't want the bi+ people who are TERFs, and maybe we don't want the bi+ people who are being really racist in our spaces. And so to be able to articulate, why it is that we're so intentional about anti-racist spaces, about, intersectionality being core to our organizing around justice, like that all comes back to having the values, and having those values is what makes it live on.
And I'll just say the best bisexuals have those values. The best bisexuals are not tough.
The gold star bisexuals.
So I have kind of two questions based on the positive vibes. I imagine there's someone listening here who's pretty fired up, pretty excited. Fucking hell, I could see this happening in my community. And they recognize, damn, it might have to be me. Maybe I need to be the one to put my hand up and be that bi lighthouse, to be the organizer, to start something. And perhaps then someone else can follow my momentum. Amber, can you run me through what a first month, a first quarter, a first year might look like for someone who dares to do something a little bit brave and say, I'm going to do this in Mississippi. I'm going to do this in Canberra. I'm going to do this in Tokyo. I need to start a bi community, and I'm going to start that charge.
Yeah. Firstly, I'm going to say, fuck yeah, do it. Secondly, I think a first little while looks like a lot of learning and a lot of listening. So by that, I mean, if you can, see what you can learn about if you don't already know, what's the queer histories of where you are? Have there been other bi+ groups? Because in a hell of a lot of places there have been. And I think it's really important to be able to connect and learn from what's come before us. And to listen. Like when we first got SBN off the ground, I want to say like the first, I don't even know how many months, was listening. Like we were convening spaces for people to input into what we were doing. We were having conversations about what community building means, about what advocacy means, about what education means.
What does that look like on a practical sense?
Yeah.
To get what does it look like to hold those spaces, to question, to listen? What does that mean?
Yeah. So what we did was we held listening sessions. They can be called whatever you want, but I like them as listening sessions. We held them at a local community organization. We held them on a university campus. So putting them in different places for people to be able to access them, and advertising the shit out of them so that people actually know that they're on, and going in with some questions to actually guide your discussion, but being so totally willing to let go of those questions and just let, I'm going to go back to emergent strategy again. I know I keep talking about it, but I really love it so much. And there's something in Adrienne Maree Brown's book around there only being a conversation that you can have with people while you're in that room, in that moment. So the idea being like anytime you have a conversation about something, it changes shape, it changes form. You've got different lived experience embedded into it. So really being present in the conversations that you're having and let community tell you what it is that they care about, what it is they want to see, using that to create the structure of your organization. So for example, we heard that people really wanted spaces that were not just about alcohol. So it's like, all right, community picnics, cool. Does that sound like something you don't want to go to? Yes, great. We're doing picnics. Amazing. Or storytelling. What does that look like? What does that mean? Like, how can we embed that into what we do? So always listening, and providing different ways for people to give that feedback and give their input. So along with the listening sessions, we did like online form. Not everybody can or wants to turn up in person. So giving people different opportunities to tap in and share what they care about. And then really all of that for us led to a picnic. Like we did a community picnic. That was our first big thing. And so I think being open to listening and hearing from people in community and using that to shape what your next steps are. And I think sometimes that can be really scary because sometimes people, and when I say people, it includes myself, like want to control every step along the way. But I think in community organizing, you've got to let go a little bit. Like, sure, have a roadmap, have a framework. I think that's really important to work within. But the concrete steps to getting there, or the concrete steps to getting your bi+ community group off the ground might look really different depending on the context you're in and depending on what it is the people in community want.
So you're sort of saying like the answers are already out there. It's like you don't have to invent a new wheel. You just have to ask people what type of wheel they want.
Totally. And there are so many great bi books out there as well. Like Notes for a Bisexual Revolution fucking changed my life. Like that was so pivotal to and still is, to my bi organizing. There's amazing books about bisexual men. Like there's just really great content out there. So I would really recommend like getting into that as well to shape what you do.
So quick just clarification. So you mentioned before Adrienne Maree Brown. Are you referencing the book Pleasure Activism?
No, but she also wrote Pleasure Activism. Adrienne Maree Brown wrote Emergent Strategy as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Was that Octavia Butler?
Octavia Butler helped inform Emergent Strategy. So Octavia Butler is like this really amazing Black sci-fi writer. And one of her books, Parable of the Sower, and the sequel, I can't remember the sequel's name, Parable of the Talents, has got Emergent Strategy in it. So Adrienne Maree Brown has like used principles from that book from those books, and then conversations with other people, as well as other organizing principles to develop emergent strategy. And it's just one of the best books I've ever read in my whole life.
Great.
I'm
and then
nerding out.
Notes for a Bisexual Revolution. That's Cherie Eisner.
Correct. Yeah.
Great. Awesome.
This is such a delicious conversation. This is just scrumptious.
I am loving this.
I'm eating this up. Oh,
Steve, I don't know about you. I have like one kind of final question. Do you have anything before I jump into that one?
Amber, looking back on this, how does it make you feel?
Oh, it makes me feel so much joy to be who I am.
Mm.
Like I think about, I think about the fact that I used to feel so much shame about who I am, and I used to feel so scared of who I am, and now I'm just happy to sing it from the rooftops. Like, put me on a mountain, I'll shout it. Like, I love being bisexual. I love being in community, and I feel so proud of the friendships that I've made along the way. Like, I really mean it when I say I've met some of my very best friends from being in community. I'm gonna get a little emotional.
Yeah,
yeah, my eyes are actually welling up. Amber, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, I feel so proud. And I want to tell my younger self that, like, to keep going, because it's all fucking worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, Amber, that's... I'm literally crying.
I'm literally crying.
That's so wonderful. And something that's so exciting about all of this is that, like, this is such a microcosm of the bi experience across the world, right? This is Sydney. Pretty small. Like, maybe large for us because we're here. But there's so many different potential communities popping up all over the world. And some are really beginning to flourish. Some are just starting. Some, like we were saying before, at a conception stage, maybe just an idea, a spark. One of the things that really hit me a few years ago when we ran a COVID bylines, our big kind of bi visibility day event, we collaborated with other communities. And I see that has been a bit of a power for our community in, like, going forward into the future, is this connection, collaboration, and an opening up, a blossoming into a wider bisexual community, because we've been told to be so small and so private for such a long time. Do you have any recommendations, wisdom, insight into how we might connect our communities locally, across, like, nationally, internationally, globally? Any insight as to how we as bisexuals here in so-called Sydney might connect with LA or Tokyo or Sweden?
It's incredible because I think that it's probably never been easier to connect with people all over the world. So we are in this really unique position where we've got it at our fingertips, and we know, like, we've learned so many lessons from other movements that, you know, you're most effective when you're working together. Like, collective action works. And so I think, like, there are really, really cool things out there. I find out about groups through TikTok. Like the bi content on TikTok is amazing. So
yeah.
I'm going to need you to send me some recommendations.
Has great bisexual content. But also, like, there's some really great stuff coming up for Bi Plus Visibility Day. So, like, a lot of groups, now is the time that they're going to be sharing a lot of their content, sharing ways to get involved. So, like, I think people should have a look around for that. Here in so-called Australia, the Stand By Us conference will be running again. So that'll be all online. So, like, you know, link into that, because there's some really, really cool events happening. And I know that there's also global Bi Plus meetups that happen. And it's like people from all over the world on a Zoom chatting with each other just about life. And it's just, yeah, it's amazing to be able to connect, because even though we're all in, sometimes we all get in our own bubbles, there's this really beautiful shared experience of being bi plus. And so to come together and talk about that and talk about what that means and to make friends and have a laugh, is just, it's incredible.
That's wonderful. Yeah, for the past 3 minutes, I've been like crying or on the verge of crying. And I'm just like trying to like not let it completely drown my microphone. This has been,
that's the other thing to go back to your question before about, for someone who wants to get involved in organizing, like, don't be afraid of the emotion that can come with it, because it can be really, really emotional. And that's okay, because emotions are not good or bad. They just are. And so like lean into that.
That sounds like someone who's done a minor in psychology.
Or someone who's been to a lot of therapy.
The therapist is paying off. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Emma, this has been such a treat. I truly, truly just have adored this hour and a half we spent together. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your wisdom, your experiences, your insight into community organizing. It's just been an absolute treat.
Thank you. I've had so much fun. And I'm so excited for this whole podcast. It's going to be so amazing.
Make sure you check out, to the listeners, follow Sydney Bi Plus Network on Instagram. Keep an eye out in your local area for things happening for Bi Plus Visibility Month, Week, Day.
Absolutely.
Soon to be financial year.
And really, if there is an ultimate call to action, send money and finance your local bisexual organization. They are doing some fantastic work, whether it's Sydney, whether it's Toronto. I'm having fun really kind of imagining names of cities, whether that is Michigan, whether that is
New Delhi,
Paris,
Buenos Aires.
Yeah, like
come on.
Out there fighting the good fight and funding those organizations directly really, really empowers those groups to do good work and work for you. So if you have the capacity to do so, please follow along, fund, participate. It goes a long way.
Hashtag pay your bisexuals.
Yeah, right. That's the new one. That's the new hashtag. We'll put it on some shirts coming soon.
Pay your bisexuals.
Awesome. Amber, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber.